Alright, so in this video, I'm going to be going over Thermo versus Spiral, and the fact that I have to make a video on this 2 years after Godzilla X Kong came out is just sad. But anyways, to not waste any more time, let's roll. First things first, Thermo just slams, and it's not even remotely close. Before you try you're just biased because you like King of the Monsters more, just know I love both of the movies. I kinda like Godzilla X Kong more, mainly for just the action and the fact that there's no gonorrhea jokes. But anyways, the only arguments people have for Spiral are 4 novel statements and a quote from the movie. I'll explain why Spiral, even being close to Thermo, isn't consistent within lore at all later, but for now I'll just be going over the statements. Side note though, none of the novels are canon. Actually read them instead of cherry picking statements to fit your narratives. The novels at worst tell an entirely different story, and at best tell a similar story that still has a ton of changes and altercations. They break the canon of the films to simply way too many times to be considered canon. But anyways, first, I can't remember the exact statement, but Hampton compares the energized Goji to Thermo. If you take this statement as anything other than comparing visuals, you just don't have any reading skills. Never once does it state energized energy levels, let alone that it's even close to Thermo. It's simply just a similar appearance, nor does it make any sense that energized would be close to Thermo. A small power plant doesn't contain nearly as much or as powerful radiation as the biggest nuke the military had in 2019. Power plants contain weaker radiation so they can keep it in high amounts. The radiation released by a nuke upon explosion are gamma rays, neutrons, beta particles, and alpha particles, all of which are significantly more potent than the radiation in large power plants, let alone smaller ones. Moving on, the highest readings ever recorded. This doesn't really matter. The Argo, the only thing capable of getting energy readings, left after Ghidorah's first amp and was nowhere in sight by the time of Mothra's sacrifice, let alone Thermo. And as for the satellites Monarch has, these are used to track Titans. We are never once shown any readings from the satellites or any statements saying the satellites can get that info. So saying that they can is just purely headcanon with no actual evidence behind it. Hampton feared an explosion similar to Boston. This statement means nothing at all, as no explosion happened. If I swing at someone and someone says, I fear this punch will be 100 times stronger than Mike Tyson's strongest punch, and I miss, does that mean I can punch harder than Mike Tyson? No, it doesn't. Stop being ridiculous. Now, for the final novel quote, radiation jetted from his mouth, stronger and brighter than ever before. This is specifically talking about the atomic breath, hence why it specifies his mouth, which is true. Spiral has the strongest atomic breath. Thermo didn't use his beam, so he wouldn't be included in this discussion. If the general energy was stronger than Thermo's, the statement would have said radiation jetted from Godzilla, stronger and brighter than ever before. Specifying that it's coming from his mouth secludes the statement into only talking about his beam. Now for the movie statement. The movie states that Godzilla can hold 20 times the energy in his new form. This is referring to stamina. Godzilla has the capability to fight for significantly longer, and even assuming this means he can hold 20 times the radiation, he didn't get even remotely close to absorbing 20 times the radiation than he did in King of the Monsters. One small power plant in a couple hours absorbing solar radiation isn't 20 times the radiation of a smaller nuke, let alone the biggest one the military had in 2019. Using novel quotes for your arguments just proves you run off bias and not fact. Read the novels, people. There's free PNGs online for every novel. They're all really good, and they're just on their own, they're great novels. But in terms of canon, it's just no. They go up against the films way too many times, especially the older novels. The newer ones are a little bit better, but they still just pretty much tell different stories with different fights, different characters, different scenes, etc. Now, for the lore and consistency, Shimo and Ghidorah are stated close with the edge to Shimo, which is consistent within the lore, seeing how an ancient Goji was able to fight both Shimo and Ghidorah. This is even more consistent within the feats shown in the movie, with Evo being stated 2 times stronger than his base, like the source or not, it's the only one we have that gives it a definitive answer to how much stronger he is. And he was barely below Shimo. Nuka Amp's boost is unknown, but saying it's about a 1.5 times boost is fair in my opinion. While in this state, he was above Ghidorah, but unable to do much of any real damage. Pretty much the same situation as Shimo, where Godzilla landed most of the shots, but they didn't do any real damage, and the hits that Shimo or Ghidorah landed were more impactful. Once Evo entered his spiral state, he went from barely below Shimo to equal to her, which is stated in the very novel Spiral Glazers love to use. Meaning Spiral really isn't much of a boost, going from able to contend with Shimo but being slightly below her to equal. After Ghidorah's first amp, he no-diffed Nuke Amp, meaning the power difference between them is significant. And if you want to argue the power grid didn't amp Ghidorah, simply got him back to full power, this helps the Thermo arg even more as it proves the statement that Shimo and Ghidorah are close. With a base Ghidorah, using that argument, being able to beat Nuke Amp, who's only getting stronger as the fight went on, would get Ghidorah close to base Evo level, if not equal to him, proving the fact that Ghidorah and Shimo are close. But moving on, after this, Ghidorah absorbs a lot of Goji's radiation that's also mixed with Mothra's essence, which is a proven way to amp yourself in the Monsterverse. After this, Ghidorah would be extremely powerful, but once Goji was in his Thermo state, he no-diffed Ghidorah. No selling his attacks to the point where he was smiling and choosing his pulses to get rid of more radiation rather than his beam, which would have done more damage. Via relativity scaling, with Shimo and Ghidorah being close, if Spiral is equal to Shimo, but Thermo is far ahead to the point where he negative-diffed him, how could Spiral be stronger? No matter how you look at it, Spiral being above Thermo just isn't consistent in any matter, whether through feats, statements, lore, and relativity. Shimo and Ghidorah being close in power, which is backed up by the feats in the movies, means Spiral just can't be above Thermo. If you aren't convinced yet and still believe the novel is canon, here's the result of that. Kong no to mid-diffs Ghidorah, depending if you say base Evo is stronger than Thermo. Now, you heard that and had a physical reaction, no? That just doesn't make any sense. But the problem is, the movie and novel show us that base Evo isn't much weaker than Shimo, and Spiral is equal to her. So Spiral isn't much of a boost off Evo. Ignoring everything else I've said previously, this is the simple truth. With Kong being able to stun or even knock out Evo and take multiple hits from him, Kong would outscale at the bare minimum base Ghidorah by a large margin, getting to the level that Kong could be amped Ghidorah if you believe Spiral is even equal to or slightly weaker than Thermo. And no matter what, saying Spiral is equal to or stronger than Thermo means Evo is close to that range because, again, for the 5th time, Spiral isn't much of a boost off Evo, which is shown in the movie and stated in the novel. Proving this even more, Kong was able to stagger Shimo in the novel with a few punches using his normal arm, not the glove. So if Spiral is equal to Shimo, and Spiral is stronger than or equal to Thermo, Shimo would also be stronger than or equal to him, so Kong being able to stagger her gets his AP miles ahead of amped Ghidorah's, whose beams did so little damage to Thermo that he smiled. AP equals durability, which is proven in Kong's case with the beatings he gets throughout GVK and GXK, so arguably base Kong, 0 weapons, would bare minimum be able to high-diff amped Ghidorah at best, assuming that Spiral is even equal to Thermo. Notice how that doesn't make sense? Notice how once you get into the relativity scaling and you actually dig more into what that scaling means for the verse, it just doesn't make sense. Because now the top of the verse goes 1 Shima, 2 Godzilla, 3 Kong, 4 King Ghidorah, 5 Muto Prime. Does that make sense to you? Do you really think that a base Kong, by the way, no weapons, is stronger than Ghidorah, Muto Prime, even Mechagodzilla, who I do believe base Kong could put up a good fight against, but he would not be able to beat Mechagodzilla without any weapons? I mean, come on now. But anyway, I understand Spiral is the new big and powerful form, but the simple fact is, Spiral isn't close to Thermo. With the lore, feats, and statements we have, Spiral being even slightly below Thermo isn't consistent at all, and that's not counting relativity scaling that causes... I could argue Skarking has better durability than Amp Ghidorah if you want to say Spiral is stronger than Thermo. And the biggest problem with Spiral being stronger than Thermo is the statements need to have consistency behind them. Even if you want to use them. Even if you want to say highest energy readings, yeah, sure. Satellite's got energy readings of Thermo, and Spiral has the stronger energy readings. The explosion that Hampton feared, that counts too. Whatever. It needs to be consistent. There needs to be consistency behind these statements, or they're just ruled as outliers and they don't matter. If the novel said that Godzilla could twerk and destroy a black hole, would that be canon? Would that be canon in the Monsterverse that Godzilla could throw it back and destroy a black hole? Really? There's no consistency behind that, so it wouldn't be canon. And again, if you have to cherry pick novel or statements from a novel because a majority of it goes against the movie, guess what that means? You'll never be able to guess. It's not canon. People need to stop using biases and just actually use their brain. Thermo no-diffed an extremely amped Ghidorah. Spiral was equal to Shimo. Shimo is not that much stronger than Ghidorah. If she was Ancient Goji fighting her, Shimo would have just simply one-tapped him. No struggle. It would have been a fart in the wind for Shimo. If that's how significant the power gap was, where Shimo is stronger than Thermo, what's a base Godzilla gonna do? But anyway, if you still believe Spiral is stronger, there's simply no changing your mind, so I won't be wasting my time, kind of bars. Outside that, if you enjoyed, leave a sub, a like for real, and have a snazzy one.